I believe in what I'm doing, but I ain't making money and I ain't having fun. Basically, I got the radio show. I was listening to a guy on the radio, and I started feeding him articles. Eventually, it just got to be too much trouble for him to read the articles on the air. So I began appearing on the air with him. And what I would do is I'd save articles that were important, at least in my opinion, and I believe that was vindicated ultimately. And I would read them on the air. My program had a specific anti-fascist and intelligence-related, dealing with matters pertaining to the intelligence community focus. It was here at KKUP. It was called the Back Page News. I changed it to Hard Rain, kind of like Bob Dylan's, a hard rain's gonna fall, which I believe it has been and is. And then eventually I started phoning in to a talk show over on KFJC and began working with my eventual co-host over there, a guy named Nip Tuck. Finally, he went on to pursue a literary career, and I took over the show by myself.
A power scale is another important yardstick of despotism. It gauges the citizens' share in making the community's decisions. Communities which concentrate decision-making in a few hands rate low on a power scale and are moving towards despotism.
I call myself an anti-fascist. Fascism is what Mussolini described as the corporate state, or corporatism. Well, Mussolini felt that a government organized along the lines of the way a corporation is organized, top-down power distribution and control, was the way to do things. And he felt that basically what benefited the corporations would, in theory at least, be good for everybody else.
Today, democracy can ebb away in communities whose citizens allow power to become concentrated in the hands of bosses.
What I say goes, see? I'm the law around here.
George Seldes, the late great anti-fascist writer, described fascism as, quote, a spoils system, unquote. And I'll leave it to people to reflect, for example, on the presidencies of George Walker Bush as to whether this could constitute a spoils system, and one that has been essentially directed at benefiting corporations.
He was brought before a firing squad, and in this manner he died, as tyrants should, and was hung up by his heels. A fitting and glorious end.
The government lies routinely. The government lies pretty much any time they can get away with it. And if you can't call them on it, if you can't look at the evidence and say, hey, this is a barrel of bourgeois, then it makes them that much more emboldened to lie further.
Everybody thinks of this huge conspiracy going on, and it's not that hard to kill somebody, even a president. It's not that hard, believe me.
Well, JFK is a really obvious one, right? That one is so much fun to talk about because you can bring out so many things in the official explanation that really don't follow. They really don't make a lot of sense. In fact, they hardly make any sense at all.
Oswald was a lousy shot, and certainly not a very good shot. He was not a practiced marksman, let alone a sharpshooter.
From the stockade fence, the grassy knoll, to the street, or even from the 6th floor. I mean, it's like you could have hit him with a brick.
The speed of a Mannlicher Karenko, the world's worst shoulder-fired weapon or something like that.
And the rifle with which he was shooting was a horrible rifle. It was dubbed by the Italian army, for whom it was originally made, to be the humanitarian rifle, because it was said it had never intentionally killed anybody in battle.
The Warren Commission and the history of the assassination has led us all to believe that it was done by a bolt action rifle like in the movies, click, click, boom, click, click, boom.
And it was also sighted, I've forgotten off the top of my head whether Oswald was right-handed or left-handed, but the rifle was sighted in for the opposite hand shooter, so he wouldn't have been able to hit anything.
Anywhere in that plaza or beyond that plaza. That's been some other speculation that, hey, maybe it was a guy a half a mile away that shot him. Who knows?
And some of the FBI's top marksmen tried to duplicate Oswald's feat, and none of them could.
So I think within hours, if not days, the triggermen at Daley Plaza were gone. They were off the planet.
The magic bullet theory is one of my favorites,
And the bullet, supposedly one bullet left, made all of the non-fatal wounds in Governor Connally and President Kennedy. This entailed making some sharp turns in midair.
The commission being run by a bunch of people who weren't actually police homicide detectives, you know, let alone having any experience with this sort of thing.
The people that know a little bit about it or were in it and backed out of it are still on the run.
All the way to all the strange irregularities with the autopsy.
The sum total of the material that was found in the bullet wounds, and that supposedly was made by CE-399, the so-called magic bullet, exceeded the amount of material that was missing from the bullet. The bullet was almost pristine.
And you can poke a million holes in that official explanation, so it's a fun one to talk about. I mean, one of the values of talking about these things like JFK is that it encourages people to actually look at evidence instead of just going, you know, well, you know, Oswald did it because the government said so. That's really a bad reason to take any kind of explanation. Granted, exposing these things never actually caused them to stop lying, but it does cause them to have to be a little more circumspect in how they lie, and to pay at least lip service to the idea of not so egregiously lying that the confidence in the system completely breaks down.
80% of the public believes that JFK was killed by a conspiracy, but the 20% that don't all work in the media. Okay, they all work at, you know, New York Times, Washington Post, LA, etc. All those people somehow don't.
A community rates low on an information scale when the press, radio, and other channels of communication are controlled by only a few people, and when citizens have to accept what they're told. In communities of this kind, despotism stands a good chance.
As we speak in the year of our Lord 2008, that barring a serious sea change, we are headed down the road to fascism.
Let's put it this way. It's not what you see on television. It's not what goes on the floor of the Senate. It's not what goes on C-SPAN. It's not what goes on CNN. That's not the way real power works in America and throughout the world.
Avoid the comfortable idea that the mere form of government can of itself safeguard a nation against despotism.